There's a version of someone's life that exists only inside their head. It's specific. It has a cover design, or a city, or a number on a scale, or a room that belongs to them where they do the thing they've always meant to do. They've visited this version so many times that they can describe how it feels to have arrived. The detail is real. The clarity is real. The conviction that they're the kind of person who could pull this off, that's real too. What isn't real yet is any of it. And years pass this way. From the outside, the gap between the size of someone's dream and the absence of any movement toward it looks like a lot of things. It looks like laziness, or fear, or comfortable self-deception. It draws a specific kind of contempt from people who did the thing, because, from where they're standing, the only thing between the dreamer and the doing is a decision. And the decision keeps not being made. But the psychology underneath this is more precise than any of those explanations, and understanding it changes what the pattern actually looks like. Because the person living inside it is rarely lying to themselves in any obvious way. They believe in the dream. They mean it. The issue isn't sincerity. The issue is something specific happening in the brain when a desired future gets visited too vividly, too often, too comfortably. Gabriele Oettingen, a psychologist at New York University, spent years studying what positive fantasizing actually does to motivation. Her findings ran directly against the logic of most self-help. The more vividly and positively people imagined achieving their goals, the less motivated they became to take action toward them. The brain, it turns out, partially registers the simulation as the experience. When you visit the version of your life where the book is published or the business is running, the reward system produces something that resembles the signal it would generate if you had actually done those things. The fantasy isn't the prelude to action. In a significant number of people, it functions as the substitute for it. The dream is spending money the person hasn't earned yet. Every visit to the imagined destination uses some of the motivational energy that starting would require. By the time the moment arrives to actually begin, the feeling of having already made progress, accumulated across dozens of mental visits, has done its work. The urgency is softer. The gap between the dream and the present feels smaller than it is because the mind has been making the journey without moving. Imagine someone who has started their novel 50 times in their head. They know the first paragraph. They've worked out the protagonist's voice, the structure of the opening chapter, the turn in the middle of Act 2. They've had the moment, more than once, of knowing with complete clarity that this is something they could do, something they should do, something that fits exactly who they believe themselves to be. And they haven't opened a document and typed a sentence yet. And years have passed this way, with the novel completely intact, completely vivid, and completely unwritten. This isn't a story about laziness. It's a story about a nervous system that found an efficient solution. The imagination ran the experience. The reward arrived early. And nothing the actual task can offer will feel as clean as the version the mind already delivered. There's a second mechanism operating alongside this one, and it's quieter. Psychologists call it temporal self-appraisal, the consistent tendency to imagine a future version of yourself as more capable, more disciplined, and more emotionally resourced than the version of yourself that exists today. The person who will write the novel has more uninterrupted time, clearer thinking, better conditions. This future person is more ready. The present person has too many other things pressing. The future person will handle it. This isn't experienced as an excuse. It's experienced as an accurate assessment of the situation. The reasoning, that you'll start when conditions are more stable, when you've finished the other thing, when you feel more settled, doesn't feel like avoidance because you're not choosing between the dream and comfort. You're choosing between the wrong time and the right one. The right time keeps arriving later, and later keeps meaning tomorrow in a way that feels sincere. What no one says about this clearly enough is that the feeling of readiness doesn't come before action. It comes from it. The person who waited until they felt ready was waiting for a signal that starting the thing would have produced. But they were waiting outside the door when the signal was only available on the other side of it. There's also something happening at the level of identity that makes this pattern extremely stable. For many people who dream big and don't move, the dream isn't just a goal, it's a self-description. I'm someone who is going to write this, build this, become this. Functions as an identity in the present tense. It answers the internal question of what kind of person you are, and it does this without requiring any present tense action to maintain it. Identity is one of the most defended things a person carries, and this particular identity, person with enormous potential who hasn't started yet, is protected by the absence of any test of it. Because here's the thing about starting. Starting produces evidence. Evidence can confirm the dream, or it can challenge it. The novel in the mind is perfect. The first draft of an actual novel is not. The business plan on the whiteboard solves every problem elegantly. The actual first month of a real business solves almost nothing elegantly. Beginning is the one act that exposes the gap between the imagined version and the built version. And for some people, that gap, the ordinary, humbling reality of the thing in progress, is more frightening than the continuing absence of any progress at all. Staying in the planning phase is not passivity. It is the only strategy that keeps the ideal version permanently intact. The unmade film is always better than any film that gets made. The never attempted business contains a success rate of exactly 100%. Starting is the only thing that ends this, which is partly why starting keeps not happening. Psychologists have studied the related phenomenon of announcing your intentions publicly, and the findings are uncomfortable. When people share their plans and goals with others, they receive social responses, interest, encouragement, reflected excitement, that the brain partially registers as progress. Telling someone about the novel you're going to write produces a small version of the feeling you would have if you'd written it. The identity has been socially confirmed. Some of the reward has arrived. The urgency to produce the actual thing softens accordingly. The planning itself does similar work. The research, the notes, the tools purchased, the courses watched, the conversations with people who've done similar things. All of this generates the sensation of forward movement, while the actual starting position stays exactly the same. It doesn't feel like procrastination, it feels like responsible preparation. And from a certain angle, it is preparation. It's just preparation that has become the destination. What perpetuates this for years, often decades, is that it doesn't announce itself as a problem. The person inside it doesn't experience themselves as someone who isn't going to do the thing. They experience themselves as someone who hasn't done it yet. The word yet is doing substantial structural work in that sentence. It keeps the door to the future open. It keeps the identity coherent. It keeps the gap between who you believe you are and what you're actually doing from becoming something you have to reckon with. The shift, when it happens, rarely comes from motivation arriving. It comes from the balance of fears shifting. There's a moment, different for different people, often invisible until after it's passed, where the weight of staying where you are becomes heavier than the weight of beginning imperfectly. For some, it's simply the accumulation of enough mornings where the note is still in the same notebook, and the feeling of, this is becoming who I actually am, starts costing more than starting would. What the person who finally begins discovers is not that the fear went away. The uncertainty is still there. The gap between the imagined version and the available version is as wide as it was. What changed is the decision about what to do with that gap, whether to stand outside it, keeping the ideal version safe, or to walk into it and find out what's actually there. The dream doesn't die when you start. It just stops being something you're protecting and becomes something you're building. Those are different relationships to the same thing. One keeps it from ever being wrong. The other accepts that it might be imperfect and proceeds anyway. Most things built are humbler than their conception. This is true of almost everything made by human hands. And that humbling, the encounter with the thing as it actually is, rather than as it existed in the mind, is survivable. More than survivable. It's the only place where the dream becomes real rather than remaining precious.